Hey guys, Triple B here. We're back with your results for the top 8 of week 12 of the Budget Build Battle Tournament over on Limitless. It's a tournament hosted for Friday nights in Australian Central Time, so if you're based in the Oceania region and keen for some single prize shenanigans, this tournament might be for you. There's no rule boxes allowed, so EX, Vs, Radiance, and A-Specs, none of that nonsense, and there is a limitation to your deck building, as you can only play 2 copies of card with the same name, so special energies, trainer cards, and Pokemon. Slight exception though with basics, so if it evolves into a stage 1 that's in your deck, you can be running 1 extra copy of the pre-evolution, just to help with consistency, and if it evolves up into a stage 2, well, you can have 2 extra copies, so you can get into it and big basics aren't just dominating the format. That's pretty much it though, so let's kick into it and I'll run you through the top 8 decks from this week's tournament. So in 8th place, we are seeing an interesting list using Charizard with Rapidash and Talonflame. So Charizard from Pokemon Go has the ability Burn Brightly. Each basic fire energy attached to your Pokemon is going to count as 2 fire energy, just kind of boosting your output, meaning, well, you chuck 2 energy and Charizard can start attacking. You do have Magma Basin in here. Oh, actually, you don't have Magma Basin in here. That's a different concept. Okay. But yeah, chuck 2 energy on Charizard, he can be doing 170. Rapidash 1 energy, as long as Zard's in play, he can be doing 60. And with its ability Heat Boost, allowing you to discard a fire energy and boosting your damage output by 30, can be a decent attacker to go into. As well as having Talonflame in here, being able to use Quick Dive, hitting 50. You can put it on the active, or you can snipe something on the bench. You could also boost this damage with Rapidash to do 80 to the active. The second attack, also just costing 1 fire energy, Merciless Strike, does a base of 80, but 80 more if your opponent's active's already damaged. Definitely an interesting deck concept here. It seems kind of straightforward into just, hey, I want to play some fire types, and this is what they decided to go for. I feel like you'd likely want to slot some Magma Basins in here, just to help with getting energy out for Charizard to attack, and potentially look into some different attackers to slot in, something like maybe Entei that scales up its damage based on the amount of fire energy in play, because Charizard doubles that, you can get going, or potentially Torkoal that flips coins based on the amount of energy on here. But I think this was the first time rocking up to the tournament, so honestly, solid run and making it to top 8. Congrats on that, bud. The rest of the cards in here though, it's pretty standard stuff for the format. In 7th place, we are seeing Vice. So if you're familiar with Vice games over on Twitch, well, he came out for tonight's tournament and made it in 7th place, running a Tornadus deck. So Tornadus having 2 attacks, Knuckle Punch, 2 energy, 50 damage. The second one though is kind of the mainstay of it, Storm Barrier. It does 100 base damage, then during your opponent's next turn, it's going to take 50 less damage from attacks. Being a basic colorless Pokemon means you can combine this with Bouffalant, whose Curly Wall ability makes it so if you have 2 Bouffalant in play, your basic colorless Pokemon takes 60 less damage from attack. So Tornadus, you get an attack off, you're taking 110 less. Not a bad attacker either, doing 130 for 3 energy, but it can't attack on the following turn. Slight limitation with that, but if you had a great way to pivot it out of the active, something like Gengar, well, you just have an instant way around that. Once during your turn, you can just switch one of your active Pokemon with one of your bench Pokemon. Well, one of your bench Pokemon with your active Pokemon, and they have a great choice to go into. You either have Tatsugiri, bouncing this in the active to use attract customers, getting yourself into a supporter, having Rescue Board on there for free retreat to pivot back into your Bouffalant, be able to attack again, or into something else just for a solid attacker, or potentially even going into Mabostiff, who once during your turn, you can switch out one of your opponent's active Pokemon to the bench. So you could theoretically throw this in the active, mess around with their bench, switch out. Not sure why I'm saying that. It doesn't even need to be in the active when you do this, so you can just do that. Yeah, go into Tatsugiri. That's what you want to go into. You want to go into Tatsugiri. The other attacking option in the deck, though, you do have Ditto, who can copy Tornadus and Bouffalant's attacks as long as they're in the discard pile. Do still need the energy on there, though. And we did cover these very briefly. 3 energy for the attack cost, a little bit awkward, but having cards like Crispin in here that lets you search your deck for 2 basic energy of different types, attach one to one of your Pokemon, put the other in your hand, then just manually attach that. That's a great way to accelerate out 2 energy in a turn. Still 2 turns to get these charged up, a little bit awkward. So you also have Joltik, whose Jolting Charge ability, well, not ability, attack, lets you search your deck for 2 basic grass energy and up to 2 basic lightning energy, accelerating out 4 in 1 turn. So you could throw 3 on a Tornadus, 1 on a Bouffalant, or potentially 2 onto 2 different Tornadus. So if your opponent has to choose something to gust, it's like, well, if you target either of these, it's just attach one onto the other, and it's ready to go next turn. Joltik isn't just a great way to accelerate energy out though, as it evolves into Galvantula, whose Compound Eyes ability makes it do 50 more damage into your opponent's active Pokemon that have abilities. Its shocking web attack isn't one to be glanced over either. We go Delameo. Wow, I probably read that wrong, but welcome to the Goomba Gang, bud. And yeah, for those of you watching this on YouTube, we are recording it live on Twitch. So if you want to catch me live, you can do these breakdowns with me over on there. There'll be a link in the description down below. The attack on here though, Shocking Web, doing 50, then 80 more if you have a lightning energy on here. So getting up to 130, and with the ability getting you up to 180. Pretty solid number to hit in the format. You'll be taking down things like Torterra, which is a pretty, well, terrifying card in the format. So yeah, that's good. Doesn't have an ability though, so ignore that actually. It's a little bit late and I'm missing a few of the gears running in there, but still a great option to be able to go into. You can be charging this up with Crispin, getting you your grass and lightning energy on there in one turn, or charge itself up with the Joltik before evolving up. Honestly, all up, this deck seems pretty solid. Also having the Raichu in here as another attacking option, 2 lightning and a colorless, 180. Does 50 damage to itself, so a little bit of a drawback to it, but not too bad. And the ability on here, electrical grounding, makes it so one of your Pokemon's knocked out, you get to move a lightning energy from that onto this. So it's like you've got lightning energy on your Galvantulas, lightning energy on your Tornadus and your Bouffalants. As they're getting taken down, Raichu is just being charged up as a backup attacker to be able to go into. So honestly, yeah, the list comes together really solid. And Vice, thanks very much for coming by the tournament, man. I hope you enjoyed it. And it was really fun being able to pair you in the top 8. And maybe I'll catch you next week. So supporter cards in here, though, we're seeing some pretty standard stuff for the most part. Arven, Iono, Lana, Research, all standard staples for this. One we haven't seen play too much yet, though, is Lacey. You get to shuffle your hand into your deck. Then you're going to draw 4 cards, but if your opponent has 3 or few prize cards remaining, you're going to draw 8 instead. Personally, I'm a big fan of Roxanne. Since I get to draw 6, my opponent goes down to 2, but Lacey just being like, okay, Roxanne says 8 cards all up. I get 6, my opponent gets 2, but I'd just like 8 instead. Lacey's a great option for that, and honestly, post-rotation seems like a great substitute for Roxanne. Either or, you're not really in a bad position. Lacey, though, unlike Roxanne, isn't a dead card for the first half of the game. You're still getting into 4 cards, whereas Roxanne, you can't play it at all. So honestly, love the logic here, Vice, and yeah, solid run in tonight's tournament. In 6th place, we are seeing Dudsta. He is running a Dragapult Espathra list, which we've previously seen him make top 8 with, so I'll quickly skim through this one. Dragapult has the Dragon Launcher attack. You're going to discard any number of benched Dreepy in play from your bench. Said that twice, but yeah. It's going to look at your bench Dreepy. You can pick as many of them as you'd like, and then you're going to do 100 damage to your opponent's Pokemon for each one. So it's just like ping that, ping that, ping that, potentially taking out 3 things off their board. Having a pre-evolution Dragapult or Dracloak that has Recon Directive, you get to look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put one into your hand, put the other on your bottom of your deck. Makes it a great consistency card, adding draw power in here and making sure you can get into your Dragapults quickly. Second attack on here though too, so if your opponent is playing Manaphy and it's like, well, I can't really spear things off their bench, and doing 100 to their active isn't enough to take a KO, well, you could use Spooky Shot and just hit it for 120 instead. The other attacking option in here is Espathra, whose ability Stance makes it so when you evolve up into this Pokemon, you get to prevent all damage and effects of attacks done to this Pokemon on your opponent's next turn. So it's not like they could Devo TM you, put damage counters on you, or even just hit you in the active. You have a turn of just like, nah, can't do anything to me. It's pretty solid. The attack on here also being a great threat. Glittering Eyes does 70 base damage, but if Tulip's in your discard pile, 70 more. So effectively 140 all up, as long as you can get that into your bin, which shouldn't be too hard, and it's a really good supporter for this deck, since Tulip lets you just get any combination of 4 basic psychic Pokemon or basic energy, psychic energy that is, from your discard pile and pop them immediately into your hand. So it's a great way to be able to reuse your Dreepies and also just boost up the damage output of your Espathra. So early game, you're just kind of going Dragapult, wipe their bench. Late game, you go Espathra, I'm invincible, what are you going to do? Yeah, love it. Also, having Fluttermane as an attacking option in the deck, having Midnight Fluttering. When it's in the active spot, you get to shut down your opponent's active Pokemon's ability. Okidogi is one of those cards that has seen quite a bit of play in the format. When it has a dark energy on it, it effectively gets 230 HP, so it can be a little bit tricky for the rest of your deck to deal with, at least in the early game. Like later in the game, you go Espathra 140, double it for weakness into them, you're good, but Fluttermane being a great option to just go, that ability's gone, I do 90, it doubles for weakness, you're gone. So Good call, and also helps out in the Lost Box matchup, shutting down their Comfy in the active. And the other Pokemon in here being Cleffa, just for some early game draw power, and having Free Retreat, it makes a great pivot. In 5th place, we are seeing Milky's Inspirational Challenge deck. So Slowking came out in Stellar Crown, and yeah, he was like, I'm gonna make a deck with this. And then he did, and it's kind of terrifying. So Seek Inspiration is going to discard the top card of your deck. If that card's a Pokemon and it doesn't have a rule box, which rule boxes aren't allowed in this format, so as long as it's a Pokemon, you're good to go. You get to choose one of its attacks and use it as this attack. So for attacking options in here, he gave himself Kyurem, Trifrost. You get to discard all energy from this Pokemon, but do 110 damage to 3 of your opponent's Pokemon. You're only going to have a Psychic and a Colorless, so you're just ditching those two to be able to spear 110 on 3 things. Not bad. Also, the fact that Kyurem's ability Plasma Bane makes it so if your opponent has any cards in their discard pile that say Colress, you can use this attack for 1 colorless energy, means you could theoretically just attack with Kyurem yourself. Since the new Colress card was seeing some play in decks tonight, being able to get a special energy and stadium card, so Kyurem becomes an attacking option, and if you run into any Lost Box players, you're just going to eat up their board. You can take out their Sableyes, their Cramorants, their Comfies. It's a good card. The other attacking option in here, Conkeldurr. It's going to use Gutsy Swing for 250 damage. Normally has a pretty hefty attack cost, being at 3 colorless and a fighting, but if it's affected by a special condition, you ignore all energy of the attack cost, or if you just discard it with Slowking, you're just using it for 2 energy instead, so 250. Yeah, that's pretty solid. Another attacking option in here being Aerodactyl with Devolution Ray. It does 100 damage to the active, then if it's hitting an evolution Pokemon, you're going to devolve it. So going into something like Torterra that's got 170 HP and might be a little bit awkward to deal with, you hit it, it goes down to a Grottle, all of a sudden it only has, I think it's exactly 100, and it's knocked out. Not bad. Or into other decks where they're rare candying up into a stage 2, you devolve them down to a 70 HP basic. Yeah, they're gone. So yeah, definitely a threat. Also sneaking in Crobat in the list, which has Critical Bite. It does 30 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon, so you can be targeting the bench, and if it takes a knockout with this damage, you're going to take 2 extra prize cards from it. So you could be going for a 3 prize knockout. It's a little silly, especially when we are seeing baby Pokemon seeing play in the format, like Dudsta had Cleffa. If you target his Cleffa with Crobat, it becomes a 3 prize Pokemon. It's concerning. It's definitely concerning. Annihilate also finding a slot in the list with Rage Fist. It does 70 damage for each prize card your opponent's taken, and Aegislash having Hard Bashing. It does 120 base damage, and it isn't going to be affected by any effects on your opponent's active Pokemon, giving you a shred attack of sorts. So for example, into Vice's deck, where they had Bouffalant reducing the damage that their guy took, and Tornadus reducing the damage that they took, you just use Aegislash, go right through it. A little concerning. Now the Slowking, the condition of the attack obviously costing 2 energy. We've got Xatu to help pay for that, and drawing cards. Puts a Psychic energy from your hand onto one of your bench Pokemon. Draw 2, not bad. Pays for that attack with an attachment for a turn, and we're ready to go. But the tricky bit is getting these Pokemon on top of your deck to make sure you can use the attacks. And to do that, they're running it with Academy at Night. Once during each player's turn, they can just put a card from their hand on top of their deck. So it's just, I want to use Kyurem, or I want to use Conkeldurr. Cool, just it's there. Slowking, good. I like it. Obviously, something to be mindful of. In this format, you can only run 2 copies of a card, so it would be interesting to kind of hear the logic of not running something like Roseanne's Backup, which would allow you to recycle your Stadium card back into the deck and get around that limitation of only having 2. But honestly, you made it to top 8 and got 5th place, so the list seems pretty solid. You've got a lot of cards that can help you just get multiple prizes off 1 attack anyways, like use Crobat, get 3, use Kyurem, potentially take 3, so maybe you only really need to use this twice in a lot of games, and you don't really need to be recycling it. But honestly, Milky, solid run, and love seeing these creative decks you come up with every week. In 4th place, we are seeing Nikki Nintendo with a Pokesplash deck. Rocking the Kingdra. So Kingdra has World Tide, reveal the top 6 cards of your deck, then it does 60 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon for each energy card that you find there. So you can be sniping the bench, or you can be hitting the active. You got a lot of options. Obviously, if you're going for the bench, Manaphy and Rabsco will be protecting them, so keep that in mind, but potentially if you see a Bibarel on their bench and it's like, hey, they have a small hand, cool, just take that out. Now they're in a really awkward position on the following turn, or if you see that they're trying to set up an evolution Pokemon and haven't quite got there yet, it's like, well, I'm going to take that out before that's a threat. So yeah, honestly, fair. For the other main attacker in here though, they have Basculegion. It has Upstream Spirits, doing 20 damage for each basic energy card in your discard pile, then shuffling them back into your deck. So Kingdra's going to be kind of milling your own energy, and then Basculegion's like, neat, I can use those to have a big attack into the active, and then it sets up energy back into the deck for Kingdra to just kind of rinse and repeat. Being a water-based deck, they do run Irida. It's a great way to get into your rare candy in your Kingdra to get online immediately, as well as Candace, which looks at the top 7 cards of your deck. You can reveal any number of water, Pokemon, or energy you find there and pop them into your hand. So a great way to just kind of like search through your deck without necessarily drawing all the cards, because you do want to keep the energy cards in there. So if you use Professor's Research, which just straight draws into 7, well, you might be taking some of those energy out of your deck and into your hand. Whereas this is like, I see the Pokemon, I grab those, I need 1 energy to pay for the Kingdra's attack. Cool, those other energy I saw there, that's fine, they can stay in the list. It also means if you're holding a rare candy, you can just be looking at the top 7 to find a Kingdra, instead of potentially having to go research and losing that candy and hoping to find another one and a Kingdra. So honestly, I really like this card for the list. Larry also finding a spot in here. I think this is the first time I've seen this in deck. You're going to flip a coin. If heads, search your deck for up to 2 Pokemon, reveal them, put them into your hand. If tails, search your deck for a basic Pokemon. All right, that's interesting. Just kind of another way to get into your Kingdra pieces while keeping the energy in the deck. And Silene just being a great way to reuse cards. So like you really want to have your rare candies to get Kingdras out, while Silene flips 2 coins, put any number of the amount of heads that you hit on top of your deck. So it's just like, cool, I'm just going to guarantee myself a top deck into a rare candy for next turn to get another Kingdra online. Respect that. In third place, we are seeing Jamjar's Bearlock list. I will try to talk about this list to do it justice. I've had to play into it and it's kind of terrifying, but I'm not really a control player, so there's probably going to be combos here I'm missing. But the main logic of it is Ursaluna has Peat Hunt. For 1 colorless energy, you get to put up to 2 cards from your discard pile back into your hand. And it's not limited to like items or trainers or Pokemon, it's literally just any cards. So kind of the idea here is you go behind in prizes at some point, and then you're just able to reuse Counter Catcher. You're bringing up non-attacking Pokemon into the active constantly while getting other key pieces to help you avoid decking out or just set up your board. You've got a lot of disruptive things as well as just consistency things. So like Curlier for draw power, evolves into Gallade, guarantees you just any supporter every single turn. Yeah, it's threatening when you have things like Eerie that can get rid of item cards from your opponent's hand. You have Boss's Orders for, well, Gust. You've got Turo to be able to loop your guys if they're taking a bit too much damage. Obviously having Palpad to be able to recycle these supporter cards. And then Ursaluna being able to recycle the Palpad to recycle those supporters that Gallade can then just grab out of your deck. It's a pretty scary loop once it gets online. Also having Area Dose makes the retreat cost of the active evolution Pokemon 1 more. So you're using that Counter Catcher, you're bringing up something like a Bibarel, which has 2 retreat cost. You're burning through your opponent's switch cards with Eerie, and they're also burning through them just by using them. They have to attach energy to be able to hard retreat, and Area Dose is making them have to attach 1 more. It's really frustrating. And then Chandelure just for some added mill for their deck. So when you evolve into this Pokemon, you can just mill the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck. And you can be looping that with Professor Turo with Ursaluna. So just slowly burning through your opponent's deck. Regieleki being a great way to just be able to reuse trainer cards, putting 1 from your discard pile back into your hand, kind of like a slightly weaker Ursaluna, but being on a basic Pokemon, gets online a little bit faster. Cleffa for some draw support in the early game, and then, yeah, just kind of the standard control stuff. Crushing Hammers, Capes to make your guys bulkier. Yeah. There's probably a lot of combos here I'm missing. I'm not a control player, but if you like control, well, you'll probably like this list. I won't necessarily like that you're running it, but doesn't mean I don't respect it. Like, control is definitely one of those things that, as players, we need to be aware that it exists and just know how to play the matchup. So the more that you guys start playing these, the more we need to adapt our lists and develop our skill sets, and then you guys do too. So it's an alternative way to play the game. Not knocking it by any means. Just keep in mind, time is a thing. If you go to time in this format, it is just straight up a tie. So you need some sort of win condition, which I can respect in this list. They at least have Chandelure to mill just to speed up that process, and can technically attack with Ursaluna, having reversal energy to help pay for the attack cost. So yeah, it's pretty cool. In second place, we have Raspberry, who piloted the elephant in the room. Copperajah. So its ability Massive Body makes it so as long as this is in the active spot, your opponent can't play any stadium cards from their hand. So they're running stadiums like Full Metal Lab, which makes it so their steel Pokemon take 30 less damage from attacks. They also have Pot Helmet, which makes it so their non-rulebox Pokemon take 30 less damage from attacks. So you have this, your opponent can't bump your stadium. You have this, well, your opponent could like Lost Vacuum it or something, but effectively this is going to be taking 60 less damage, has 200 HP already, which is it's a pretty bulky guy, and it can do 130 damage with Nasal Lariat. There is some extra text on here though. You can do 100 more damage, and if you do during your next turn, this Pokemon just can't attack, which isn't great. Like, as long as you have a way to kind of switch it around, you'd be fine. And in Stellar Crown, we did get Ursaluna, which makes it so the retreat cost of any of your Pokemon that have a steel energy attached to it, it just doesn't exist. So theoretically, you can get 2 Copperajah online, and then Ursaluna just lets you loop into each other. It's like, this is charged up, this is charged up, cool. I can't attack next turn, go into my other one. I can't attack now, go back into me. Okay. You get where I'm going with it. The attack cost on there though, being 4 steel energy, it's kind of fine because you have Matang who can just look at the top 4 cards of your deck, and any basic steel energy you have there, put on your Pokemon in any way that you'd like. So yeah, it's pretty easy to get this charged up. You have Reverum for some added draw power in the deck. You'd have to discard a energy card from your hand, but you draw until you have a 6 card hand. So kind of like Bibarel with an added step, but getting you an extra card as the trade-off. And then because you are going to be potentially discarding a lot of energy with this Reverum, or committing a lot of energy onto Copperajah and having it knocked out, it's a little bit risky, but you can just use Basky Legion, put those basic energy from your discard pile back into your deck and hit the active really hard. Kind of like Kingdra does, likely doing slightly less damage, but you get these energy back into the deck, then Matang charges them back up onto another Copperajah, or even your revenge attacker, Zamazenta, who has Metal Shield. It's going to take 30 less damage from attacks, so comboing that with Pot Helmet and Full Metal Lab potentially takes 90 less from attacks. It's kind of nuts, and Retaliate's going to do 100 damage to the active, but if one of your Pokemon was knocked out by your opponent, 120 more. So being able to just kind of take a revenge KO doing 220 is definitely a solid number to hit. Rest of the stuff in here though, pretty standard stuff. We've got Professor Turo just to be able to let your guys eat some hits, then scoop them up, put them back in, right? You'd be discarding the energy, so that's when Basky Legion could recycle it back in, or just Super Rod it back for Matang to charge up, and just wash off any damage your Copperajah might have taken. Heavy Baton's in here, so you can chuck this on a Pokemon with 4 retreat cost. When it's knocked out, move 3 basic energy from that Pokemon to your bench Pokemon in any way that you'd like. Keep in mind, Ursaluna removes the retreat cost of your Pokemon. So if you have this on Copperajah, but Ursaluna's in play, yes, he has 4 retreat costs, but he has no retreat costs, so it wouldn't trigger Heavy Baton. So just be mindful of that. There's situations where this card won't work as you might think it's intended. Luxurious Cape also being a great way to give your guys some extra HP, so Copperajah could theoretically be a 300 HP Big Elephant. Gives up an extra prize when you knock him out, but hitting that kind of damage is a little tricky, and having Turo allowing you to just kind of eat those hits and then pick it up, losing the cape, but you've eaten some hits, so you've probably taken some KOs. That's fine. And in first place, I stole this one. Yeah, I took the tournament down this week. I did send it back with a list I played a few weeks back that I've titled Burp Brain. So you've got Xatu to accelerate energy out to your benched Pokemon. You've got Fezendipiti being another bird that gets charged up, and the amount of energy on it is going to scale up the damage output by 30 for each one on it. So you can hit some pretty scary numbers. Getting 5 energy, you're doing 150, deals with most things in the format, or 6 gets you up to 180, and you're taking down Torterras. Adrena Pheromone also makes it so if you have a dark energy on it, when your opponent tries to attack you, flip a coin. If you get heads, you just ignore any damage they try and do. So being able to just manually attach a dark energy onto it, or a luminous energy counting as a dark and psychic energy, so paying that attack cost while paying the ability cost, it's definitely a solid combo to be able to go into. Did sneak in a copy of Crispin as well, just to help kind of pay for that. Like, search your deck, get a dark, get a psychic, Fezendipiti's online, and doing 60 as early as turn 1, so you don't have to wait for Xatus to get online, and also gives you an out to charge up your Monkey Dories. Kind of in a similar situation, wanting a Psychic and a Dark on here, so you can use Adrena Brain. It lets you move 3 damage counters from one of your Pokemon onto your opponent's Pokemon. I like it. The monkey's pretty silly. We've seen a lot of Frostlass previously seen play, so this gives you a way to heal off some of the damage, since they'd be, well, just pinging everything that has abilities. Xatu, Monkey Dory, Fezendipiti. Tatsugiri, Fluttermane, Manaphy, everything has abilities in this. We need Munkidori. It's pretty much an auto loss into Frostlass without it, and we also have Moonlit Hill, letting you discard a Psychic Energy and healing 30 damage from all of your Pokemon in play. Plus, once we put this into the discard pile, we can have our Power Glass on our Pokemon, so at the end of our turn, we can get a energy back from the discard pile. So it's basically like, use this, heal 30, use this, get that energy we discarded. Now we do 30 more damage with Fezendipiti the following turn. Or the other play you can do is if you don't have a dark energy attached to your Fezendipiti after like you attack, maybe you only have some Psychic on here because your dark energy was attached to a Fezendipiti that got knocked out the previous turn. Well, if you have Power Glass, your turn ends, you get a dark energy back from the bin, it goes onto this Fezendipiti, so on your opponent's turn, they try and attack, you're still gonna flip that coin. So yeah, it's a nice combo that comes together. Fluttermane being in here, same reasons as I listed in Dudsta's, helps out in the Lost Box matchup, helps deal with Okidogis, and the fact that we can be charging this up with the Xatus, we're in a pretty good way. Like, it can be a great attacker using Hex Hurl, 90 to the active, and putting 2 damage counters on your opponent's bench Pokemon. Combining these damage counters with damage manipulation from Munkidori, you can do some pretty silly stuff. Tatsugiri, great guy to just chuck in the active, have Rescue Board, get into our supporters, and Manaphy providing us some bench protection. The rest of the list I feel like is pretty straightforward, but if you have any questions, please ask me in the comments down below. But hope you guys kind of enjoyed this video. It's been a bit since I've done one of these top 8 breakdowns. Apologies. I do want to keep doing them and help growing the community for this format. We host the tournaments on Limitless every Friday night in Australian Central Time and the first Friday of every month for North American players, so you guys don't miss out. But if you're keen for games aside from Fridays, or just like, hey, it's Tuesday afternoon, I wouldn't mind playing, there's always people looking for games in the Discord channel. There'll be links to all these in the description down below, so why don't you join the community? And I'd love to hear what kind of decks you're going to cook up with the format. Till next time though, stay golden, you Goombas.